I built my gravel bike just under a year ago using parts exclusively bought from AliExpress, and the carbon fibre frame itself was from a company called Seraph in China. Having clocked up a few thousand miles on that bike now though, and really putting it to the test on rides like the dirty Reiver and North London Dirt, I decided it was time to give it a full, clean, stripped down inspection and rebuild to really put to bed this idea that cheap Chinese parts are no good. However, having only done the North London Dirt ride last weekend, it's fair to say that this bike is looking less than factory fresh, so I need to get it clean before I strip it down in my garage. Now, on that front, I always used to be someone who was content with just squirting a little bit of washing up liquid in a bucket of hot water to clean my bikes. However, I was horrified to recently learn how bad that can be for your frame and components. What I didn't realise is just how much salt is used in dishwasher liquid, which is great for getting dried on food parts off your plates, but absolutely devastating for the longevity of any metal and even carbon parts on your bike. Enter Muckoff then, who kindly agreed to sponsor this video by sending me a few of their products recently to really get this bike back looking showroom ready. Muckoff products are specifically designed to be used on bikes so they don't contain any harmful properties that will ruin your prized possession. So let's get this thing clean and then I'll be happy to get it back in my garage and we can start stripping it down. Okay, so first we've got the drivetrain cleaner, which we're going to spray liberally all over the cassette, derailleurs, chain and chain rings and let it soak in for a minute. Then once it's soaked in, you want to agitate all of that muck on the cassette and derailleurs, which you can do with the claw brush. You want to really work the formula in there to dislodge any stubborn grease or grime. Then use the end of the claw brush to get all of that congealed oil and dirt off the jockey wheels. Once you've done that, give the drivetrain a good wash down, and while I'm here I'm going to throw the hose over the rest of the frame to get rid of some of those bigger lumps of mud and dirt and to get it wet and ready for the next treatment, which is the nanotech cleaner. Now once the bike is wet, spray this all over and leave it for 5 minutes to really go to work on all of that dirt. If you have the Muckoff pressure washer, you can go for a full snow foam covering. However, for this one I'm going old school with a bucket and a sponge, making sure to get into all of those awkward spaces, and don't forget to give your wheel some love using the wheel and cassette brush, which is perfect for taking all those bigger bits of mud off of your rims. And once that's done, you can just simply rinse it all off. Then just dry it off with a microfiber towel. Now the frame is fully clean and there shouldn't be any other contaminants dropping off of it, we can go back to the chain to give that a final clean by using the X3 dirty chain machine. Fill up the reservoir with the drivetrain cleaner, clip it over the chain and run the chain through it a few times. Now in terms of lube, with the UK weather being what it is, I've gone for some all-weather stuff. So when I'm invariably caught out in a summer rainstorm, it's not going to rinse my dry lube away and I'm not going to get excess dust and dirt sticking to it on dry, dusty rides. It's basically the best of both worlds. To put this on, simply run the chain either backwards or forwards and drip a little of the oil on the inside of each link and allow it to soak in. Finish off by wiping any excess lube off with a microfiber cloth. So now the bike is clean, but to help keep it that way, we've got one final thing to do, and that's run some of the Bike Protect spray over it, which will help disperse any remaining water and make it harder for any dirt or grime to cling to the bike when you next take it out. Make sure to cover your braking surfaces to stop them getting contaminated, and to help with that, Muckoff have sent me these handy disc brake covers, and once they're on, spray the Bike Protect all over the bike, wiping off any excess product again with a microfiber towel and allowing to dry. And that's it, this thing is now concourse ready. All in all though, once I'd got all of the products together, this only took around 5 minutes to complete, so even after a long ride, it needn't take forever to clean your bike up, ready for your next outing. So thanks again to Muckoff for sponsoring this video and helping me show you guys just how easy it can be to keep your bike protected. Right, so now this thing isn't going to start dropping big clumps of dirt and oil all over my garage carpet. We can get it inside and get it stripped down. Okay, so now we are in the garage, which I am very happy about because England is experiencing somewhat of a mini heatwave at the moment and it's starting to get very hot out there. But that aside, now this thing is beautifully fresh and clean, we can go about stripping it down. Now before I do that though, I should just say, as I mentioned earlier, I've done a good few thousand miles on this bike now and I have ridden it in all sorts of conditions. Rain, sun, snow, gravel, grit, all sorts of terrain in all sorts of weather. So I'm going to find this really interesting just to see how this thing has coped. Now, I've not noticed any issues with it thus far, other than a few months ago I had a slightly creaky bottom bracket, and eventually that turned out to be a set of dry bearings. But I eventually got that sorted out. I took them out, cleaned all the grease out and re-greased them, and now it's running absolutely smoothly. There's I've noticed no more creaking from the bottom bracket since. And the first thing I'm going to strip down is the drivetrain. Now, interestingly, if you watched my North London dirt ride a couple of weeks ago, you'll know that in Epping Forest I had a bit of a problem with the chain in that it snapped. Yeah, unfortunately, I was going uphill, too busy filming, and couldn't change gear. So I think I was going up this hill in the big ring and obviously putting quite a bit of pressure through the chain, and yeah, it snapped. So it does now actually have two master links in it, because it didn't snap at the master link, it snapped at one of the ordinary chain links. Now, I could leave the two master links in there, a chain will work perfectly fine like that. However, they're cheap and consumable, so there's no real point in keeping it on. I might as well just change it out, and I'm sure I've got a spare 11-speed chain lying around here somewhere anyway. I may change that if I find that I haven't got a spare chain. I may well put this one back on for now and change it out later. But before I do that, I'm going to grab my chain checker and give this a check anyway, just to see if it has stretched over the last year and the last few thousand miles, because it's fair to say I haven't kept this chain quite as maintained as I should have done. Okay, so dropping the chain checker in on the 0.75 side first, and it hasn't dropped all the way through, which is quite a surprise actually, because as I just mentioned, I haven't fully maintained this chain probably quite as well as I should have done. So yeah, that is quite a surprise, and just for good measure, we'll turn it over and put it on the 1.0 side, and yeah, obviously that doesn't drop through either. So yeah, the chain, despite the fact that it snapped a couple of weeks ago, it's actually done pretty well over the last few thousand miles. And that was a cheap Chinese Shimano branded chain from AliExpress. So yeah, really impressed with that, and no problems whatsoever with it. Okay, so that's the chain checked and all fine. So now let's get the chain taken off, and I'm then going to take the rear derailleur off and get my derailleur hanger alignment tool, just to make sure that the derailleur hanger hasn't taken any damage, and to make sure that that's still true and in line as well. And just another shout out to Muck-Off and their X3 dirty chain machine. It's done an absolutely fantastic job, because obviously I've just cleaned this and re-oiled it, but not a single bit of dirt or grease coming off of it, which is a massive bonus. So yeah, thanks again, Muck-Off. Right, so aligning the derailleur hanger alignment tool with the outside of the rim of the wheel here, and that is just about rubbing on the wheel there. So now if we run it all the way around to the other side and then line it up with the outside of the rim there, that is pretty much spot on. There is absolutely no gap there, and it is just about touching the wheel rim again. So I have to say that despite the lumpy and bumpiness of the Dirty Reiver and the North London dirt ride, and that derailleur has taken an absolute battering on both of those rides, the derailleur hanger has stood the test and has been absolutely rock solid. So yeah, well impressed with that as well. Right, so that's the drivetrain done. So let's drop the wheels out, take the cassette off, and check the front and rear hubs. Okay, well the first thing I notice is that the through axle has come out very nice and clean. I did grease it up before I put it in the last time, and actually I can't remember the last time I took this out, but it was quite a while ago, but there's no dirt or any grit in there. So the through axles have lasted pretty well, which means that there is a fairly tight seal around the wheel hub, which is a good sign. But let's get the cassette off and have a proper look at the hubs. Now, as I mentioned in the build video for this bike, this cassette is a ZTTO branded one, and it cost, I think, maybe 25 quid, again from AliExpress. But looking at it, there doesn't appear to be any wearing of the teeth whatsoever. I've not experienced any slipped or skipped shifts, and actually it looks very, very nice. And again, it does obviously look very clean at the moment thanks to the clean I've just given it. Yeah, once again, very impressed with that. But even more important than that is this hub. So let's have a quick look. A good sign that there is a nice tight seal on this hub and the bearings inside is that this top cap that normally just pops off is a little bit. So I wonder if I can just take the whole hub off. Oh yeah, it's coming. There we go. All right, there we go. There is the entire hub off, and that is remarkably clean, especially considering the North London dirt ride that I did a couple of weeks ago, which was incredibly, incredibly wet. We were going through what appeared to be waterfalls at some point, and this is showing absolutely no signs of water ingress whatsoever, and it's all lovely and clean inside where the bearings are in there, and the grease all looks very, very fresh. So yeah, I am incredibly impressed with that. There is obviously a very tight seal, and these elite wheels are obviously made to a very exacting standard, because Yeah, that is really clean. So that's the inner bearing, but actually even the outer bearing, there is a little bit of dirt and grime in there, but actually none of it looks like it's got to the bearing itself. So the bearing cover has sealed that really well. So yeah, that is pretty impressive. And in fact, it's so clean, I'm not even going to bother cleaning it out and re-greasing it because it looks perfect the way it is. Big thumbs up to Elite wheels here. This is one of the ENT series of wheels, which I actually used on my road bike as well. And I've done at least 5,000 or 6,000 miles on those wheels now, and they continue to impress me just the same as these ones do. So I've got no doubt that these ones will continue to go as long as the road ones, especially if they continue to look like this. Right, so that's the back wheel done. And while I don't think it's necessary, I am going to look at the front wheel as well, just to check and make sure that that's in the same condition as this one. Right, well straight away I can see it's a similar situation with the front through axle. Absolutely no issue with that whatsoever. Still nice and greasy on there, and nice clean grease as well, so no dirt or grime has got into there. And I can't actually take the seal caps off of the front hub here. However, just spinning it, there's absolutely no resistance there whatsoever, and that is beautifully smooth. So again, much like the rear wheel, I've got no concerns there whatsoever, and I don't see the point in even trying to crack that open because that is making no noise and there is no friction there whatsoever. In fact, I'll hold it up close to the microphone, but you're probably not even going to be able to hear anything. Although, having done that, I now realise how pointless that is because all you're going to hear is my thumb rubbing against the hub. But take it from me, it's beautifully smooth with no resistance whatsoever. So yeah, again, another big thumbs up for the Elite wheels. Okay, with the wheels out, I'm now going to have a look at the crank, and this is a good point to give them a good spin to see how that bottom bracket is working now. So let's see A, if it spins freely, and B, if there's any crusty or grinding noises coming from them. So let's have a listen. Okay, so that spins pretty well, and there was quite a bit of noise coming from that, but again, it feels nice and smooth, and there's no real resistance there whatsoever when I spin it in either direction. So that is pretty positive, but again, I did take these out recently and clean them up and re-grease them, so I'd be a little bit upset if there were any mega problems with these, but let's get the cranks off anyway, and we can have a proper full look at the bottom bracket. Right, so having taken the drive side out and looking at the axle here, there is quite a bit of dirty grease and there's some grit and a little bit of water in there, but you're going to have to expect that from the bottom bracket, again, in the conditions that I've ridden this thing in through snow, rain, dirt, everything. So yeah, you're going to have to expect a little bit of detritus getting in there, but actually it doesn't look too bad and it will clean up nicely and go back in. But that aside, let's have a look at the bottom bracket. Okay, yeah, so as you might imagine, there is a little bit of dirt and again some water inside that bottom bracket shell, but largely it does spin nice and freely, actually on both sides. It doesn't sound too bad at all. So yeah, I'm not going to need to take that apart again and re-grease because as of now, that is pretty good. Okay, so with the bottom bracket done, we move up to the front to the cockpit, the handlebars. And this is going to be a little bit of an interesting one because since I've built this bike, I've had this chimney on top of the steerer sticking out here because I just haven't wanted to take it all apart again with the internal routing and stuff to be able to cut that down. I'm not going to include that in this video because that's sort of getting away from the point of what this video is. So let's get the top cap off and then I'm going to remove the front brake caliper and then let the fork drop out. Okay, slight change of plan because I've just realised that as this front brake caliper is internally routed, I'm not going to be able to drop the fork out fully without disconnecting the caliper, and that means I'll then have to do a complete brake bleed on this system, which I hate doing, and I've mentioned that a number of times before, so I don't want to go as far as that, but what I am going to be able to do is pull the fork down enough to take the handlebars off, and then I'm going to grab my endoscope and push it up through the frame, and we're going to have a quick look inside the frame just to see how it looks from the inside to make sure there's no cracks and no nasty looking carbon surfaces there. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to cut down that chimney as yet, but at some point I am going to put my big boy pants on and take this whole system down and take that chimney off. But actually, I don't mind it. I hated it when I first built it, but actually I've come to love it, so it's not so much an issue now. But yes, let's get this fork dropped slightly out, get the handlebars off, and then we can get the endoscope up inside to see what we can find. Right, well, as soon as I drop the fork down an inch or so here, I can see that there is a large amount of dirt and rubbish built up just on top of the crown race here. But that is to be expected with the wheels spinning around here and throwing rubbish up into the bottom of the headset here. You're always going to have to expect that. So I'll give that a little clean up before I put all this back together, and I will re-grease all the headset bearings. But now that fork is dropped out slightly, I'm going to grab my endoscope and put it up through the frame to see exactly how this thing is looking from the inside. Okay, so we're just moving up along the top tube now, and the rivet you can see there are the rivets for the top tube bag on the top of the top tube, and you can see there that is looking pretty nice and smooth the whole way down. There's no rough edges of carbon fibre there where the joins have been made, and yeah, that looks pretty impressive. Again, nice and clean, and yeah, that's all looking pretty much how I would expect it to be honest. But that's the top tube. Now let's see if we can have a look at the down tube. Okay, yeah, so what you can see there now are the cable housings and the hoses for the brakes and the shifting. And then if we move a little bit further down, let's see if we can get a good view. There you go. And again, that is looking very nice and smooth inside there. I don't think you can have any complaints at all about that. There's no rough edges, there's nothing there that would cause you any real concern. Up the top there as well, that all looks nice and smooth. So yeah, from that point of view, I am fairly happy with it. But there's one more thing I want to check, and that is the seat tube. So let's go ahead and get the seat post out, and we'll put the endoscope down there and have a look. And we can also have a look at just how the seat post has fared, because when I first got this thing and I took it on the Garmin ride out last year, there was a little bit of groaning and creaking from this, which eventually was solved with a little bit of carbon gripper paste. So I think it was just the carbon surfaces rubbing against each other, and as soon as I put a bit of carbon paste in there, that noise went away. But it will be good to see just what the seat tube and the seat post look like. But actually, before I do that, I'm going to put the front fork and the headset all back together after giving it a good clean and a re-grease, because I want to be able to put the bike flat on the ground. And with the fork out, as it currently is, it's going to be wobbling around all over the place. So let's get the fork, headset and stem all put back in place. But even before a clean-up, actually, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is the lower bearing here on the fork is, again, lovely and smooth. So despite all of that detritus and water and dirt that's being thrown up under the top tube here and going straight into this bottom headset bearing, yeah, that's actually nice and smooth and no problems there whatsoever. So that's held up really well. So yeah, once again, some serious kudos for the sealing on this frame, because although around the top of the crown race there was quite a bit of dirt, none of that seems to have got its way up into the bearings, which yeah, is really positive. And then the same situation at the top as well. That is again lovely and smooth, which you would expect for the top headset bearing. It doesn't get quite as much punishment as the bottom one, but even so, yeah, lovely and smooth. Right, so now we know that that's all working okay. Let's give this a good clean up, re-grease, and get it back together. Right, well that is the fork fully installed back in and the handlebars done up. I'm not sure that's entirely straight at the moment. I might have to realign that later once I've got the wheel on. But I've put the front caliper on, but only loosely. I'm going to have to wait until I get the front wheel back in so I can align that fully with the disc rotor. But now with that done, I can get the bike out of the stand, drop it down, and we can have a look firstly to see if this securing nut here has become rusted, as they sometimes do, because again, with all the water that's being thrown up at the back of the seat post here, there is a tendency for this securing clip here that tightens up with a hex head to become rusty and then difficult to get out. So let's see if that is the case with this one. And just so I'm not working on the floor, I'm going to put this in here, but don't come at me in the comments. I'm not clamping it down. It is literally just resting there. So I'm not clamping the carbon fibre top tube. Do not come for me in the comments. Although having said that, that's now a little bit too high. So let's drop this down and then we'll have a look at this securing nut. Well, first positive sign that there was no problem undoing this hex head bolt at all. Wasn't stuck, there was no graunchiness to it. So let's see if I can actually get this clip out and take the seat post out. It's a little bit grindy, but again, there is some carbon gripper paste in there, so you would expect that. But actually, And that came out nice and easily, and yeah, no problem at all there with that securing clip. There's still quite a bit of carbon gripper paste on there, but there's no issues, as I say, with that securing clip whatsoever. So now that that's out, and again, fairly impressed with that, let's get the endoscope back out and have a look down the seat tube to see if there's any problems there. Right, there's a little bit of carbon fibre layup there that is just sticking out a little bit, and I assume that's going to be down by where the braze-on mount is for the front derailleur, and I assume that that's just where the balloon that gets put inside to create the form that the carbon fibre sheets then get laid around. That's obviously just rolled over, because you can see a little bit of the resin there, that yellow green stuff, that's the resin. And here we are down at the bottom bracket, just trying to have a quick look around. Yeah, everything looks pretty good and clean there as well, nice and smooth, no jagged edges, no real problems. It is all pretty smooth inside there and looking nice and clean. So aside from that little bit of carbon that's sticking out, which again can easily happen when the balloon is expanded inside the frame, it could just push a little bit of the carbon fibre fabric sheet over. Apart from that, everything else inside the frame looks nice and clean. There's no mega crusty bits of carbon fibre. There's no like shredded strands anywhere, which is always a positive thing. So yeah, for a frame that cost just £560 from China, yeah, I don't think you can be too upset about how beautiful this looks, both inside and outside. And so with all that said, the only thing really to discuss now is how the paintwork has fared. And again, on this front, I have to say I'm very, very impressed. There are a couple of minor scratches just at the front of the top tube here, and then there's also some paint wearing here at the bottom of the fork, which I imagine would have happened when I was doing the dirty Reiver and I really tightly clamped my light on the front there, and it's clear that it was a little bit tight, and going over the bumpy ground it has rubbed a little bit of the paintwork off there. But otherwise, the paintwork has pretty much stood the test of time. Oh, that said, on the handlebars here, you can't really see it at the moment because there is so much grease all over it, but where I've had my frame bag connected to the handlebars here, it has slightly rubbed the matte effect of the handlebars, and also right at the front of the head tube, where the bar bag has been smacking against it, it has again worn away the matte effect. But as we know, it's a gravel bike, it's not a piece of art, it's designed to be used, so you are going to end up with little bits of rubbed paint and stuff like that all over the frame. But for the distance and the conditions that I've ridden this thing in, I think the paintwork has held up really, really well. And when I came in here earlier after giving it a good wash, I did actually have to stand back and just look at it for 30 seconds or so, because it does look absolutely beautiful, and I am really, really happy and impressed with the way that it still looks. So before I start writing a love letter to this thing, let's get this thing built completely back up and we'll have a final chat about my thoughts on this bike.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Right, so there we go, that is everything back together. So we've checked the drivetrain, we've checked the front and rear hub on the wheels, we've checked the derailleur hanger alignment, we've checked the headset bearings at the front, we've had the endoscope in through pretty much the entire frame, we've had a look at the bottom bracket, we've had a look at the seat post, and we've had a good look over the paintwork, although to be honest there is no real concerns with it. As I say, there are a couple of little marks, but nothing that you would attribute to a bike being a year old and having been put through its paces the way that I have in the last few rides and previous rides that I've had throughout the last year. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you would trust a bike like this, or if just looking at it fills you with dread and makes you run to make sure that your dental insurance policy is still up to date. It's all well and good for me to be happy enough to stump up 1,200 quid, which is how much this cost, to build a bike like this. But would you do the same? And if you are interested in building a bike like this for yourself, I have left all of the links to the parts that I've used in the description below. And I've also left a link for muck-off products if you want to go and buy a few of those as well. They are affiliate links, and so if you do buy anything from them, it won't cost you anything extra, but it does just help me a little bit to keep this channel running. So with all that said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this one interesting. I always find it super interesting to have a look at these bikes, especially on the inside, to make sure that you are still getting a decent quality bike despite the low price that you're paying. So I hope you found it similarly interesting, but for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to Muck Off for sponsoring this video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys.